Dalton's challenge. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "All right then," he said, his voice low and testing. "Show me." He turned toward his assistant standing by the glass wall. "Get a few of our staff from around the office, the ones from different countries. Let's make this educational." Within minutes, people began to file in, a woman from France, a man from Japan, a few others from Spain, Germany, and South Africa. The employees whispered among themselves, unsure what was going on. Dalton gestured toward Maya. "This young lady says she can speak 9 languages. Let's see what she's got." The French woman stepped forward first, smiling kindly. She didn't expect much. "Bonjour, petite," she said. "Comment siez-vous?" Without hesitation, Maya replied, "Bonjour, madame. Je vais très bien, merci. C'est un honneur de vous rencontrer." The woman's eyebrows shot up. "That's perfect," she said in surprise. Dalton blinked. Not bad," he muttered. Next came the Japanese employee, a quiet man in a suit. Maya bowed slightly and said. He froze, then smiled. "Her accent is excellent," he said, nodding. Dalton leaned back again, crossing his arms. "All right, keep going." A Spanish man stepped up next. Maya turned to him and greeted, "Buenos dias, señor. Es un placer conocerlo." He burst out laughing, not mockingly this time, but in amazement. Fluent. Completely fluent. Then came German, Italian, Mandarin, Arabic, and Hindi. Each language flowed naturally, with tone, rhythm, and even hand gestures that fit the culture. By the 8th one, the room had gone utterly silent. Dalton's assistant stood motionless. Even the ones who had laughed earlier were now watching with awe. Finally, Dalton asked, "And the 9th?" Maya smiled faintly. "The 9th language," she said softly, "is the first one I ever learned, from my mother. Swahili." Then she said, "Mama alinafundisha kuwa manino yana nguvu kuliko pesa." Her voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that filled the room. The meaning of words. Dalton's face changed. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means," Maya said, "my mother taught me that words are more powerful than money." The words seemed to hang in the air for a long time. No one laughed. No one spoke. Dalton swallowed, suddenly unsure of himself. He gestured for her to sit. "Tell me something," he said. "Where did you learn all of this?" Maya placed her backpack on the table and unzipped it. Inside were worn notebooks, some with bent corners, others filled with neat handwriting. "My mom works as a hotel cleaner," she said quietly. "We used to move from country to country because she followed work. Every time we stayed somewhere new, I tried to learn the language. I listened to the guests in the lobby, wrote down the words I didn't understand, and my mom helped me practice after her shift." She smiled, touching the pages. "These are all the words I've learned so far." The woman on the panel covered her mouth, holding back tears. Even the younger man looked down, ashamed of having laughed earlier. A shift in the room. Dalton, the man who had laughed the loudest, now sat completely silent. He looked out the window at the skyline, the one he had conquered through money and ambition, and for the first time in a long while, it didn't seem so big. He turned back to Maya. "What do you want to do with all these languages?" Without missing a beat, she replied, "I want to be a translator for the United Nations. I want to help people understand each other." Dalton chuckled, softly, humbly. "You already do, kid," he said. He stood, walked to his desk, and took out a card, gold-plated with his name embossed. "This is a scholarship fund," he said. "I started it years ago, but honestly, I've never seen anyone who deserved it more." He handed it to her. "You remind me what intelligence really looks like." Maya's hands trembled as she took it. "Thank you, sir." No, he said quietly. Thank you. The lesson that stayed. Word spread quickly through the building. Someone who'd witnessed it uploaded a short clip online. By the next morning, millions had seen it. The caption read, "Little girl speaks 9 languages, leaves millionaire speechless." And for once, the world didn't argue, or debate, or fight in the comments. They just listened. Because sometimes, it takes the smallest voice in the room to remind us all what real intelligence sounds like. Dalton leaned forward, intrigued now. His eyes narrowed with curiosity, a mixture of disbelief and challenge glinting behind them. "All right," he said slowly, a smug smile creeping back onto his face. "I'll play along. Let's make it interesting." He motioned to his assistant standing by the glass wall. "Fetch the team. Let's have a little demonstration." The assistant hesitated, unsure if this was a joke, but one look at Dalton's raised brow sent him hurrying out of the room. The silence that followed was heavy. Maya stood there, still as stone, her hands folded neatly in front of her. The adults at the table watched her with a mix of amusement and curiosity. Within minutes, the door opened again. The assistant returned, and behind him came several employees from around the office. Men and women of different backgrounds, some wearing suits, others with ID badges still hanging from their necks. Dalton rose from his seat, buttoning his blazer. "All right, everyone," he said, his deep voice echoing in the room. "This young lady says she can speak 9 languages. Let's see if she's telling the truth." He folded his arms, his smirk returning. "Say something to each of them, in their native tongue." The first test, French. The first to step forward was a woman from France, tall, confident, with neatly tied hair and a skeptical smile. She crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. "Bonjour, petite fille," she said softly. "Tu parles vraiment français?" "Hello, little girl. Do you really speak French?" Maya looked up at her and replied instantly, with perfect rhythm and tone. "Bonjour, madame. C'est un honneur de vous rencontrer." "Hello, ma'am. It's an honor to meet you." The woman's eyes widened. Her jaw parted slightly as if she'd just witnessed a magic trick. "That's perfect French," she whispered, stepping back in astonishment. Murmurs rippled through the room. Dalton raised a brow, slightly impressed but not ready to show it. "All right," he said. "Beginner's luck." The second test, Japanese. Next came a quiet man from Japan, who looked more curious than doubtful. He gave Maya a respectful nod and said, "Hello. Can you speak Japanese?" Maya smiled, bowed slightly, the way she'd seen Japanese people do, and replied fluently. "I'm happy to meet you. Your company is wonderful." The man's eyebrows shot up. He let out a soft laugh of disbelief. "Fluent," he murmured, nodding in admiration. "Her accent, it's native level." Dalton shifted in his seat. His smirk faded just a little. The third test, Spanish. A man from Spain stepped forward next, grinning widely. "All right, let's see what you've got, pequeña," he said playfully. Without missing a beat, Maya replied. "Buenos días, señor. Es un placer conocerlo. Habla muy rápido, pero entiendo todo." "Good morning, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you. You speak very fast, but I understand everything." The man's grin melted into pure astonishment. "Perfect," he said. "Completely perfect." The first test, French. The first to step forward was a woman from France, tall, confident, with neatly tied hair and a skeptical smile. She crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. "Bonjour, petite fille," she said softly. "Tu parles vraiment français?" "Hello, little girl. Do you really speak French?" Maya looked up at her and replied instantly, with perfect rhythm and tone. "Bonjour, madame. C'est un honneur de vous rencontrer. Hello, ma'am. It's an honor to meet you. The woman's eyes widened. Her jaw parted slightly as if she'd just witnessed a magic trick. That's perfect French, she whispered, stepping back in astonishment. Murmurs rippled through the room. Dalton raised a brow, slightly impressed but not ready to show it. All right, he said. Beginner's luck. The second test, Japanese. Next came a quiet man from Japan, who looked more curious than doubtful. He gave Maya a respectful nod and said, "Hello. Can you speak Japanese?" Maya smiled, bowed slightly, the way she'd seen Japanese people do, and replied fluently. "I'm happy to meet you. Your company is wonderful." The man's eyebrows shot up. He let out a soft laugh of disbelief. "Fluent," he murmured, nodding in admiration. "Her accent, it's native level." Dalton shifted in his seat. His smirk faded just a little. The third test, Spanish. A man from Spain stepped forward next, grinning widely. "All right, let's see what you've got, pequeña," he said playfully. Without missing a beat, Maya replied. "Buenos días, señor. Es un placer conocerlo. Habla muy rápido, pero entiendo todo." "Good morning, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you. You speak very fast, but I understand everything." The man's grin melted into pure astonishment. "Perfect," he said. "Completely perfect." Dalton exhaled slowly, tapping his pen against the table. 3 down, he muttered. 6 to go. The fourth test, German. Next was a tall man with a stern face and a strong German accent. He folded his arms. "Sprechen Sie Deutsch?" he asked. "Do you speak German?" Maya nodded and replied confidently. "Ja, ich spreche Deutsch. Es freut Michigan, Sie kennenzulernen." "Yes, I speak German. It's a pleasure to meet you." The man smiled for the first time. "Sehr gut," he said, nodding approvingly. "Her pronunciation is flawless." Dalton leaned back now, pretending to be casual, but the crease in his brow betrayed his surprise. The fifth test, South Africa. Then came a woman from South Africa, who crossed her arms and said something softly in Zulu. "Sabobona, Tombazane and Kane. Waikukanda Loku." "Hello, little girl. Do you understand this?" Maya's face brightened. She replied without hesitation. "Njayakuzwa Kale Kakalu. Njayabongan Gokukuloma Nami." "I understand you very well. Thank you for speaking with me." The woman's hand flew to her mouth. "She's speaking Zulu, perfectly." Now the whispers in the room grew louder. Every employee who had laughed earlier was silent. Every skeptic had turned into a believer. Dalton stared at Maya, his mouth slightly open. The 6th, 7th, and 8th. The tests continued, Italian, Mandarin, Arabic, one after another. Each time, Maya switched languages as easily as breathing, her voice carrying melody and meaning with precision and grace. She didn't just know words, she understood culture. She used gestures, adjusted tone, even smiled differently depending on the language. By the 8th one, the office was dead silent. Even the city noise from outside seemed to fade away. Only Dalton's breathing could be heard. He swallowed, his earlier arrogance now replaced by something unfamiliar, humility. Maya clasped her hands in front of her. Her voice, soft but steady, broke the silence. 8 languages so far, she said. Would you like to hear the 9th? The 9th language. Dalton's throat tightened. His voice, usually so commanding, came out quieter than he intended. What's the 9th one? Maya smiled faintly. The language my mother taught me, she said. Swahili. Everyone leaned in as she spoke. Her words flowed gently, musical, like a song carried by memory. Mama alinafundisha kuwa manino yana nguvu kuliko pesa. The sound of her voice seemed to fill the entire office, soft, calm, and powerful. When she finished, no one dared to speak. Even Dalton's usual confidence dissolved into silence. After a moment, she continued, her eyes meeting his. "It means," she said quietly, "my mother taught me that words are more powerful than money." Her words landed with weight, heavier than any deal Dalton had ever made. The room stayed still. Dalton blinked, looking at the small girl standing before him, a girl who owned nothing but a backpack and a belief in her own voice. And yet, she had just reminded everyone in that office of something priceless. That intelligence doesn't always come from universities, and power doesn't always come from wealth. Sometimes, it comes from words. From a child who listens, learns, and dares to speak them. And in that high-rise office, surrounded by glass and gold, even the millionaire had no words left. Because Maya had spoken the one language everyone understood, truth. Dalton sat back in his chair, speechless. For the first time that morning, the man who built an empire on confidence had nothing to say. His laughter, the sound that once filled the room, had faded into silence. He looked at the little girl standing before him. This wasn't just a child who could speak languages, this was someone who had lived them. Every word she spoke seemed to carry the weight of experience, the sound of airports, hotel hallways, and whispered goodbyes. Finally, he managed to ask, his voice quieter now, "Where did you learn all this?" "The notebooks." Maya hesitated, glancing down at her backpack. It was old, frayed at the edges, with one of the zippers held together by a paperclip. She carefully placed it on the table and unzipped it. Inside were a few worn notebooks, the pages slightly yellowed, corners bent, covers hand-labeled in neat handwriting. France, Japan, Spain, Kenya, Germany, China. The adults leaned forward. "These," she said softly, "are my teachers." Dalton furrowed his brow. "Those notebooks?" Maya nodded. "Yes. My mom and I used to move a lot. She worked as a cleaner in hotels all over the world. Sometimes we'd stay in one country for a few months, sometimes just a few weeks." She ran her fingers across the covers as she spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was something deep underneath, something that carried both pride and pain. "I didn't have toys or video games. I didn't even have books most of the time. But I had people," she said. "And I listened." The hotel lobby classroom. The room stayed silent as she continued. "When other kids were playing outside," she said, "I was sitting in the hotel lobby, usually near the reception desk. My mom would be working late, mopping floors or changing bed sheets. I'd sit there with a small notebook, just listening." She smiled faintly at the memory. Guests from all over the world would come and go. I'd hear them talking, laughing, arguing, and I'd write down the words I didn't understand. Just sounds, at first. Then I'd try to copy them down phonetically, like bonjour, or gracias, or arigato. Dalton leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. He wasn't smirking anymore. "And then?" he asked quietly. "When my mom finished work," Maya said, "she'd sit with me, even if she was exhausted. We'd try to figure out what the words meant. Sometimes we'd ask guests for help, or we'd look at brochures or signs to match them with pictures." She lifted one of the notebooks, flipping it open. Inside, the pages were filled with handwritten words, tiny doodles, and translations written in different colors. Some pages had stains, maybe from spilled tea or tears. "This one," she said, "has words I learned in Japan. This one is from when we lived in Spain for 2 months. And this one," she smiled softly, "has English words I heard when my mom cleaned rooms in London." She looked up, her voice trembling slightly now. "Every page is a memory of where we stayed, and how hard my mom worked so I could keep learning." The shift in the room. No one moved. The woman sitting beside Dalton blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. The two young men who had laughed earlier stared at the table, ashamed of their earlier smirks. Even Dalton, the man who prided himself on being untouchable, felt something heavy in his chest. He glanced at Maya's small hands flipping through her notebooks, and for the first time in years, he saw something money couldn't buy: hunger for knowledge. He cleared his throat. "So, you never had a teacher?" Maya shook her head gently. "No teacher. Just people. And my mom." The simplicity of that answer hit harder than any speech could. The mother behind the genius. Dalton leaned back, his voice softer now. "Tell me about your mom." Maya smiled, the kind of smile that comes from love, not pride. "My mom is the smartest person I know," she said. "Even though she never went to college. She used to say, we may clean rooms, but we can fill our minds with anything we want." Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't stop. "She always told me that knowledge isn't owned by rich people, it belongs to anyone who's curious enough to learn." She paused for a moment, then added, "Sometimes, when we couldn't afford dinner, she'd tell me stories in Swahili to distract me from feeling hungry. She said that when your stomach is empty, fill your mind instead." The room went utterly still. Dalton's throat tightened. He thought about his own childhood, private tutors, elite schools, endless opportunities, and realized this little girl had achieved more with scraps of paper and a tired mother than most people did with every privilege in the world. The quiet power of listening. Maya continued, "I learned that people are the best books. You just have to listen carefully." She glanced at Dalton, her tone respectful but honest. "Sometimes adults forget that listening is a kind of learning, too." That line hung in the air like a quiet truth. Dalton looked around the room, at his employees, his walls of glass and steel, the skyline he had conquered, and suddenly, it all felt smaller. Here stood a girl who owned nothing, yet somehow held more wisdom than the entire boardroom combined. He rubbed his chin, his voice low. "You know, Maya," he said, "I built my career talking. Giving orders. Making deals. But I can't remember the last time I really listened." She smiled gently. "Then maybe today's a good day to start." The silence that said everything. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air was thick, not uncomfortable, but reverent. The kind of silence that comes when something inside you shifts. Even the sounds of the city outside, the hum of traffic, the chatter from the street, seemed distant. Finally, Dalton spoke again, his voice softer than anyone in that office had ever heard. "Maya," he said, "you just gave me the most valuable lesson of my life." Maya looked confused. "I did?" He nodded. "Yes. You reminded me that wisdom doesn't wear a suit, sometimes, it wears a backpack." The woman beside him wiped her eyes. The young men looked up, inspired. "And Maya?" She simply smiled and closed her notebooks. Because for her, this wasn't about showing off. It was about showing the world that even the smallest voice can teach the biggest lesson. If only someone is willing to listen. That moment, the moment when a little girl silenced a room full of adults, didn't stay hidden for long. Someone in the room, one of Dalton's employees, had been recording the demonstration on their phone. They captured everything, the laughter at the beginning, the disbelief, the languages flowing one after another, and finally, the stunned silence that followed her last words in Swahili. They hadn't planned to share it. At first, it was just a clip meant to show friends, a funny story about the day their boss got humbled by a child. But by the end of the day, that short video found its way to social media. And the internet did what the internet always does, it listened. The viral moment. Within hours, the video had millions of views. Comments flooded in. "This gave me chills. That girl is a genius. Her mother deserves the world. This should be in every classroom." People were sharing it across platforms, translating the captions into different languages. Ironically, the very thing Maya loved most. The title everyone used was the same. Little girl speaks 9 languages, leaves millionaire speechless. News outlets picked it up. Talk shows wanted interviews. Schools sent invitations. Embassies, universities, and non-profits wanted to meet her, to celebrate her brilliance, her humility, her message. But Maya didn't care about any of that. When reporters knocked on her door, she politely declined. When cameras showed up outside the small apartment she shared with her mother, she hid behind her backpack and said softly, "I just like learning. That's all." Even as the world began to call her the girl of 9 tongues, Maya stayed the same. Life after the spotlight. While others discussed her online, Maya still helped her mom clean hotel rooms. She still polished mirrors and folded bedsheets, humming quietly in different languages. Her notebooks, now numbering over a dozen, were still filled with her careful handwriting, with new words, drawings, and short notes about people she met. Sometimes, she'd sneak into the hotel's empty ballroom late at night, open her notebooks, and practice her pronunciation by whispering sentences to the chandeliers. Mama alina fundisha kuwa manino yanan guvu kaliko pesa, she would repeat, smiling to herself. My mother taught me that words are more powerful than money. Her mom would find her there, sitting under the dim light and just smile. Still learning, Maya? Always, Mama. Dalton's change. Back in his corner office, Richard Dalton watched the same video, the one the world couldn't stop talking about. But for him, it wasn't entertainment. It was a mirror. He saw his own face, the smug grin, the laughter, the arrogance, and then he saw the exact second it faded. He paused the video right at the moment Maya said the Swahili phrase. For the first time in decades, Dalton didn't see a CEO or a millionaire. He saw a man who had forgotten what learning looked like. In the days that followed, something changed. He started greeting his employees differently, not as staff, but as people. He started listening when someone spoke instead of interrupting. He asked questions. He slowed down. And perhaps most surprising of all, he began carrying a notebook. The invitation. Months later, Dalton reached out. He invited Maya and her mother to a company event, an annual gala he hosted for business leaders, investors, and community partners. When they arrived, the giant ballroom sparkled with golden lights. Waiters carried trays of desserts, and a live orchestra played softly in the background. Maya clutched her small backpack nervously, feeling out of place among the tuxedos and gowns. Her mother gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You belong here too, my love," she whispered. When it was time for Dalton's speech, the lights dimmed, and he stepped onto the stage. The crowd fell silent. He spoke slowly, a man who, for once, had thought deeply about his words. "I used to think success," he began, "was about talking louder than everyone else." He paused, glancing at the audience. "But a little girl named Maya taught me something I'll never forget." He smiled, looking toward where Maya and her mother Saturday. "She taught me that real success isn't about speaking louder, it's about listening better than anyone else." The standing ovation. The room erupted in applause. Not the polite kind, but the kind that comes from the heart. People stood, clapping, cheering, even wiping their eyes. Some looked at Maya with admiration, others with a kind of quiet respect. Dalton gestured for Maya to join him on stage. She hesitated, but her mom nodded. As she walked up, her red dress brushed against the marble steps, and her sneakers squeaked softly. When she reached Dalton, he bent down and whispered, "You changed me, Maya." "Thank you." She smiled shyly and whispered back, "I just spoke what my mom taught me." Dalton turned back to the microphone. "And that," he said, "is exactly why the world needs to hear her story." The applause returned, even louder this time. The sound filled the hall, a wave of warmth and wonder. The whisper that echoed. As they left the stage, Maya leaned close to her mother and whispered, "We did it. Her mother smiled, that gentle, proud smile only a mother can have, and whispered back. No, my love. You did it. With words that spoke louder than money ever could. Maya rested her head on her mother's shoulder, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. The lights, the applause, the attention, none of it mattered as much as that one sentence. For Maya, the true reward wasn't fame or praise. It was knowing that her mother's words had reached people she'd never even met, through her voice, through her courage, through her belief that listening is as powerful as speaking. The legacy. In the following months, Dalton created a new foundation, one dedicated to funding language learning for underprivileged children around the world. He named it the Maya Project. When asked why, he simply replied, "Because one little girl reminded me that the greatest wealth we can share is understanding." Maya and her mother continued their quiet life, still traveling, still cleaning, still learning. But wherever they went, people recognized them, not because of a viral video, but because of the story it told. A story about humility. About a mother's love. About how wisdom can grow in the most unexpected places, even in the heart of a child with a backpack full of words.